today's session will provide you a general overview of how these functions that are saved in files are imported into Python and used. Okay, as usual, a video recording of this session will be uploaded to my YouTube channel, so you have the opportunity to listen to the session again, and then this notebook itself will be deposited to my GitHub repository, so you have access to everything. So all you need to do here is listen. Okay, so what is a Python module? What is a module? As I said earlier, a module is just a normal Python file. Okay, so it ends, so like all Python files, it ends in .py. Okay. However, this module, instead of holding several just lines of code that you can execute, it holds functions, like the functions we defined in the previous sessions. Okay, and sometimes they can also hold variables, not just functions, so you save them. So they're just like a container that you use to save stuff, functions, variables, classes, so that you can use them later, you can reuse them without having to define them. Okay, and what you see here is an architecture of a module. It's just a basic architecture of a module. So you have the module here, and you have several functions. So it can have one function, or it can have several functions, and these functions make up that module. Okay, but before you can access these functions, so this is like a hierarchical architecture. So before you can access these functions, you have to import this module into the current namespace or a local namespace. Okay, and that's what you have to do first. Okay, and once this module is imported, it's in the current local namespace, you can access each function here using a dot notation. And what I mean by dot notation here is that, so if I want to access function 1 or 2, for example, I'll have to say module, which is just the name of my module. So it can be any, it can have any name. So let's say you can even say Paul or Umaru. So you say module name, which is here in this case module dot function 1, because we want function. So if you want function n, you just say module dot function n. So it's as simple as that. So generically, this is a syntax: module name dot element name. Okay. There are a few best practices for writing modules and functions in Python, and I'd like to introduce you to those best practices. The first best practices include adequate descriptions in your functions and modules. Because I think I said this some time ago, even functions that you yourself write, okay, if you come back to them, say after 3 weeks, trust me, or maybe a month or so, trust me, certain aspects of that function might look strange to you, might appear strange to you. You see, so it's always good to include as much description as as possible. So when other people try to access your modules and functions, they know exactly what those modules do, or what they are all about. So that is one. Also, secondly, as you saw in the previous sessions, most times we have to import libraries and modules, when writing certain functions. For example, say in the previous session, we had to import math, we had to import NumPy, and a couple of other libraries. So it's always good practice to place those import statements at the top of the module. So let me show you here. This is a module I defined for this session. So these are the relevant libraries and modules used by the various functions in this. So you see, they're all placed here at the top. So that's very easy and makes a good professional. Okay? And there's also the final point here, that before importing a module, it should reside in the current directory, the same directory as the module importing it, or in the Python path. I would explain this to you, but this will become apparent later. So for example, okay, these are default, I'll say, modules that have been installed. So as long as they've been installed, they are always available. Okay, as long as you are working in the environment they were installed in. Okay, but sometimes for user-defined modules, like the ones we will see later, these have not been installed on your system. They exist only as a file. Okay, so before you can use them, you have to import them first. That is one. Okay, but before you can do that is without any issues, they have to either be in the current directory. Let me show you what current directory means. So for example, you see this is my current directory. So if I save this module in this directory, then that's fine. I can import it without any issues.
It's the
Or
because of
or secondly, they have to be in the same directory as the module importing it. So again, this is straightforward. So if I'm importing, so let's assume this was a user defined module. So if I'm importing this module in, this is also another module, then either I add it to to the Python path or the current working directory, or I save it in the same directory that this file is saved in. I think that is pretty clear. Okay, so now let's get to work. Okay, let me just explain these best practices using this module here. Okay, this is already clear. See, I started with this, with a description here of what this module does. See, that's simple. So whenever someone opens this file, they know exactly what this module does, and then I put all the import statements here. Again, that's easy, so that when someone opens it, they know exactly the modules that or the libraries that this module has a dependency on or needs. Okay, because some of these modules or libraries would need to be installed. So if you hide them within the code, the person might not know at all. But here, oh, someone's okay, I need pandas. So if they want to run this, they'll make sure that they have pandas installed. So just press it. And now you can see here, okay, this file has 3 functions or so, 3 or 4. Well, you can see. So you know now by now that a function, to define a function, you always, a function definition always starts with def, with a def keyword. So this is one function, this is another function, this is another function, and this is another function. See, they're all saved in this, and in fact this here is a variable. So you can, as I said earlier, you can save a variable and functions and classes in a Python module, so you can access them later quite easily. But there's something different about these functions here. Okay, if I take you back to the functions we defined in the previous sessions, not much, I didn't include much descriptions, for them. Okay, but here you see that there is a detailed description here, and you need to do this always. So this is it, this is the technique. So first, okay, you should see that this starts with 3 quotations, ends with 3 quotations, so you write everything there. So you start with a summary line that tells you what this function does, or tells the user what the function does. Okay, and then you list the parameters, okay, the input parameters for the function. So for this function, these are the input parameters. So you just say parameters and list each one. So for each one, first you state the type. So this tells the person that, oh, it's a string, and description, what this input parameter is for, okay, what it does. Simple. And returns is just, it's the same, but here it's just the variables that you will return as an answer for the function. Here it's none, because we're not returning anything. So this is very concise, and you don't need to worry about this. Let me just show you how these are normally generated. Okay, so let's say we want to define, let's say def hello. Okay, so let's say we want to define a function called hello, and a, let's say this is a string, comma, let's say b is an integer. So this is our function. Okay, so you start like that. Now to generate this is called a doc string. This whole thing is called a doc string, and it's used for documentation. Okay, that's to provide information about the function. So now let's try and generate a doc string. It's very simple. So you see 3 quotations, and straight away, if you're doing this in a desktop-based IDE, PyCharm or Spider, automatically you see this, see, generate doc string. Just click on it, and automatically it generates the structure for you. So all you have to do is, fill in the details. So here, this is where you put in this summary. Say this function, I say this function says hello, finish. So that's your description. Okay, and now it has already put in the parameters for you. Parameter A, the type is here, string. Parameters, okay, description. So all you have to do is you write your description here, finish. Parameter B is an integer. Description, again, pop up. Returns, it doesn't know what you want to return, so this is up to you, but you can use the same style. So let's say you want to return C, so you can still say C, okay, maybe C is an integer, or let's say C is a float, and you put description. Finish. So this is so informative for whosoever is using this function. So this is the tip I was talking about. So now let's do business here. Okay. So again, as in the previous sessions, I have created a couple of files. They're here, and these are the files we are using for the examples in this session. So if you're using a desktop based IDE, so you can easily just download these files directly by following this link, and then it will take you to this place, and you can download these files individually and save them on your on your computer. That's easier. But if you're running this, say in Jupyter Notebook or here, then that's when you need to execute these two cells. But these two cells are just downloading those files, so no need to be labeled about them. So let's run this. Okay, it's going to connect first. Good. Let's run this again. Now you see that it has downloaded these files and saved them in a folder called source files August 15. Okay, so this is, you can use your own name. Okay, but this is just and if you click this, you see the files. So they're here. So we have everything we need. So these are the files we use. Okay, so now let's start with the first point. Okay, we did say earlier that if we want to import a module, first we have to add that module to the Python path. That's always easy. And to add it to the Python path, it's very simple. Just use this syntax. Okay, so there is a module called sys. So you import sys first, and then you use the syntax sys append, and you put the directory, meaning the full path to the file, to the module file. So if we wanted to import this, we will just put this, the path to this file here. Okay, so this is the example. So now let's say, so first let's import sys just to see. And as I said earlier, sys has a property, let me call it property here, called path. So that's where Python stores all the directories in Python path. Okay, so if we run this, so you see, so these are the directories on Python path. Okay, or in Python path. So if Python were to look for any directory, or if you were to tell Python to import something, it will look in one of these locations. Okay, so if it doesn't find it in these locations or in the current directory, then it will generate an error to you. Okay, so now let's say we want to add this this directory, which is just this here. Okay, the sample data. So let's say we want to add it to the Python path. So all we have to do is use the syntax here. Okay, so use the syntax. So this is the directory we want to run it. So now it should be there. So now if we run syspath, you see that, we have this directory here now, there, easily. Okay, so that's just to show you exactly how to add a directory to Python path. So now let's see, how do we import a module? Okay, how? Okay, now let's see. So let's say if we look at this directory here, there's a module here, there's a Python file here called sample module1.py. It's it's just this file here. Okay, it's this file, nothing different. Okay, so there's this module here, so we want to import this module, okay, and access its functions. Good. So what do we do? As I said earlier, we add the directory holding that module to the Python path. Okay, and how do you get this? So assuming you were running this on Google Colab, all you have to do is come here, click on this 3 dots and copy path. So if you copy path, you would definitely get it. So you just put them in double quotes. Okay, so here, good. So we have the directory. So all we have to do is, as we did here, execute this command, and now this is added to the current Python path. If we let's confirm that. So you see, if we confirm, you can see that we have it here. So good. So now we can import any module that is in this directory. Okay, so now let's import the module. We know the module name is sample module 1.py. Okay, but you see that when we import it, we drop the .py. Okay, so you just use the main name. Forget, because Python already knows that it's a Python file. Good. So we import this. Okay, this is important. But how do we know that it's imported? So one way to tell is, just try to display. Okay, try to display this, which is the module we have imported. Because what happens is that when you run this, Python creates an object, okay, that is called sample module 1. So if we run this, you see exactly. So you see, it tells you module sample module. So it's saying this is the module, and this is the name of the module from, meaning it's located here. Okay, good. So that's perfect. So now we know. Okay, so now let's see if we can access its content. But before that, there's another way to check if the module has been imported, or you want to know all the modules, or all the, how do I put this, all the names, I'll say, in the local namespace. Yes. Okay, so what we would do here is we just say use this command. So this command, if you do that, see, you will see a list of all the elements in the current namespace, and you will see the name of the module here, and they are all arranged in alphabetical order. Good. So this is another way. So now let's say we want to access some of the functions in that module. Already we clearly know the functions in that module. Okay, they're here. Okay, but let's say we didn't know at all. How would you know? Okay, so one way to know is, now as long as we have imported the module, so just write the name of the module, put dot and pause. So when you put dot and pause, you see a pop-up like this. Okay, so this just lists everything in that module. Okay, functions, variables, and even modules that you imported. Okay, but you can tell exactly which one of these are functions and which are not. So you can see the one with the box, okay, against them are the functions. So there are 4 functions in this module. These ones are maybe other modules, okay, and this with the spanner is data. It's a variable that has data. Okay, so that's person. So good. So now let's say we have already seen here. Let me put this again. that there is a function called quadratic root calculator, right? So let's say we want to call that function. That's the function we want to call. So how do we call it? As I said earlier, okay, if you want to access the functions of or the elements of a module, you use a dot referencing, or dot, well, I call it dot notation, but dot referencing. Okay, so and this is how you do it. Okay, you cannot just say quadratic root calculator as we did, see, as we did in these functions. See, here we just said quadratic because we had already defined quadratic root calculator in the namespace. But here in this case, quadratic root calculator is not in a namespace at all. So let me just, okay, good, let me just run this so you see exactly what I'm, okay, good. So let's say, okay, so let's run this and see what will happen. See, error, it tells you name quadratic root calculator is not defined, even though we know quadratic root calculator is in module. Okay, but it's in a container. Just assume that you have a box, you have a black box, and you have a series of items in that box, and you ask someone, please fetch me, say, a key. How would they know where the key is? They don't know, because the key is in the box, so they have to access the box first. And it's the same thing here. So you always have to use this dot, that, okay, you write the name of the module and then the function easily, and this happens. And now let's see the relevance of what we did earlier, the description. See, so if you hover your mouse or something over the name of the function, you see exactly the description we put in earlier. You see, it tells you exactly def sample module 1 dot. In fact, this already gives you a clue of how to call the function, because it tells you dot that, and you can see now that, okay, it gives it defines. So the definition is here. It gives you a list of the parameters and their types and the return values. So even if someone did not open the file, they would definitely know what the function does. That is the key here. So now let's run this. So you see, so that's the that's the beauty of of Python. So here we have this huge code. See, this huge code hidden somewhere. Okay, and all we had to do here was import the module and call just that single function, and voila, everything is here. Okay, good. So now that is clear, I guess. So now let's invoke the other function, because there are several functions here as we saw earlier. Okay, so there's another function here called plot chart, and what plot chart does is, let me hover this, and you can see exactly, it tells you plots the data contain that. So you see, it explains file path to Excel file holding data, useful path if file not reset. So you see, it's explaining everything to you. So even if you didn't write this code, you know. And if you want to see the source code, you can even see, it tells you view source code, click on this and it will open the source code for you. So if you're this coding guru, you can access the source code and modify and do whatever you want to do. Okay, and this function requires two inputs, as we can see here, and these are the inputs. File path here is just the full path to this Excel, and this is something you have to know, because if this is if you are running this from your computer, from your PC, it's very likely, well, not very likely, your path will be different because your file will be residing elsewhere. So what you have to put here is exactly where your file is residing, the path to that file. It doesn't mean that it has to be this. No. So take note of that. So now if we run this again, you see, voila, gives us everything. So it's a complete black box. We don't need to know what's happening in there. All we have to do is supply the right values, and stuff is happening. So you can also retrieve data, okay? And if we take a look at this module here, there is there's a variable already defined here called test variable, this one. So let's see if we can access that variable, okay, from just the import. Again, the same, if we want to access a variable, all we have to do is the name of the module dot the name of the variable. Here in this case, as we saw, it's called test variable. Again, if we print this, exactly what is here, you see, exactly what we defined. Where is it? Okay, I need to okay, good. Okay, that's done. Good. Here, so you see, exactly. Good. I think this is fun. Okay, now that's just one way to import a module. There are a series of other ways. Okay, another way is here you saw that when we imported, we just said import sample module. Okay, some import and the name of the module, but you can import the module and assign it to an alias, because for example sample module 1 is very long. It's it's a long name. So let's say you want to assign that to a few a 3 or 4 letter word or something. Okay, and all you have to do is say, okay, so now what I'm doing here is just some housekeeping. So I want to delete, because we have already imported the module, so I'm deleting it. So we start with a clean slate and see what happens. Okay, so now we're importing this module. This is the name of the module as this. So you see, so instead of just saying import, you stop as. So which means you're saying now to Python, I'm importing this, but I am assigning this name to it, so it's no longer known as this. Okay, and if you want to call a function in that module, you do not have the right to use the actual name of the module. You just use the alias here. So in this case, okay, I need to import this. So in this case, you see, now I'm getting the same result. So that's another way. Okay, so now let's see. So let's run the same function, but okay, I've already deleted it. So good. Forgot. But now instead of using SM1, which is the alias, let's attempt to use the actual name and see what happens. You see, you get an error because Python does not recognize that name at all. Okay, you imported this module as another name, so that's what Python knows. So just okay, as I said earlier, you could import the individual elements of a module. So like here, these functions, you can actually, instead of, because sometimes you do not need all the functions in a module. Maybe you only need 1 or 2. So instead of importing everything, you just want to import one. That's possible. Okay, and how do we do that? There are several ways. Okay, but one easy way is use a from statement. Okay, we already know that the modules, sample module 1 has 3 functions or 4 or so, and one variable called test variable. So now in this case, let's assume we want to import the function named plot chart and the variable test variable. So all you have to do is, it's just like normal English. So you see, we want to import these functions from this module. So all you have to say is from the name of the module, import, you write the names of the functions, or if it's just one function, just write the function. If it's multiple functions and variables, you write them as separated by commas. Simple. So we do this. But now something has changed. Okay, now we cannot reference this module again. because we did not import the module. We only imported functions, these functions, selected functions from that module. So if we want to use any of the functions, we can use them directly. We have the right now, okay, because Python recognizes them. Okay, so let's say we want to run plot chart. We don't need to say sample module one dot plot chart again. No, we just run. Exactly. In fact, if we say sample module one dot plot chart, Python would tell you that, you know, I do not recognize that at all. Let's hope we deleted it. Good. You see, name sample module one is not defined, so it doesn't recognize it. Simple. Good. Yes. So the same thing with you know, test variable. This is a variable. In fact, you can see it here already with the values. Again, we don't need to reference the module. We can just call the function. Okay, that is one way. Another way is it's possible, you know, to assign aliases, you know, just as we did in the case of the module. Say import sample module as sm1. You can also assign aliases to its individual elements. Okay, so again, for this is just a normal housekeeping rule. We want to delete the modules and with the functions we imported earlier, you know, so that when we do tests, we are sure that you know, there hasn't been any contamination from previous calls. Okay, so now let's see. So let's say we want to import these functions again, but now instead of using their full names, we want to assign them to aliases. So it's the same principle. From sample import this, but now we want to save it as PC. So instead of plot chart, Python will always recognize this as PC, comma, test variable as TV. Simple. You can give it any designation anyway. So now, if we want to call this function, we do not have to say plot chart. We just say PC. If we say plot chart, we will get an error. Okay, so that's what we do. Again, simple. So if we were to say plot chart now, Python will tell us, I don't recognize this guy. So you see, good. The same thing with TV. So again, we don't need to say test variables. You see. So you see, these are shorter and it makes your code compact. Good. That's that for that. Oh, okay. As I said here, we run the last two separate routers, but you see that it's the same. And there is a third way to import modules. Okay, module functions. Okay, and you know, it's using this syntax here. You say from module import star. What you're saying here basically is saying to Python, import everything, all the functions and variables in this module into the current namespace. Okay, that is convenient, but it's dangerous. Again, very dangerous, because sometimes, you know, people may assign the same names to different functions from different modules. So let's say I have a module called module A, but there's a function there called test, and maybe I have another module called module B. There's a function there called test. Okay, and if I import those functions test as, say, you know, I just say from module imports, let's say from module A import star, from module B import star, then there's going to be confusion. Okay, some of the variables might be overwritten. So here's a simple example. So let's say here, let's define a variable called test variable, and we assign the value of 9 to it. So now we know test variable has a value of 9. Okay, but let's import from sample, import everything. We know sample has a variable called sample. Called test variable. So let's do that and see what happens. So we have done that. So now let's print test variable. You see, instead of 9, it says, okay, let me do this again. So this is test variable is 9. So let me print, and you see that test variable is 9. So now let's import this and do, so you see, because the value of test variable was overwritten when we did this import, so that's why it's not good. But if we had said, say import, okay, say import, say from sample import test variable as TV, then that would be different. Or if we just said import sample module 1, and if we want to access test variable, just say sample module 1 dot test variable. That's always the most convenient way. Okay, so now let's say executing a module as a script. Okay, there are times when sometimes you want to run the module from the command line. Okay, I'm sure most of you know what command line is. Okay, I'm using Mac. Command line is okay, good. Terminal like this. Yeah, so this is just most people are more comfortable with this. Okay, say you don't want to open an IDE, you just want to run a shortcode or something, you can do it from the command line. So let's say you have a Python function, module that you want to run. Okay, and there are two ways to do this. So if you're running from a Python console, which is like here, okay, like here, this is a Python console, or even here, this is a Python console, then the syntax to use is this. Okay, but if you're running it from command line, like here, the syntax to use is this. So the difference here is the exclamation mark. Okay, here, note that. So, but how do you do this? How do you run the module? All you have to do is Python and write the name to the, okay, let me just show you here. So let's say this module here, okay, this is the module here, we copy the path and we want to run it. Okay, and so all we do is write this and write the path. Write the path to that here and run. And again, as I said earlier, if this is saved on your PC, then your path might be different, so you don't have to necessarily, it doesn't have to be this, so you just have to use the path to where the file is saved on the PC. Okay. So you run this. Now let's run this. So this is interesting. I'm gonna show you what this means. Okay, so you can see that you do not see any plots at all. All you're seeing is displays, and that's one disadvantage. When you run from the command line, sometimes plots are suppressed. Not sometimes, plots are suppressed, so you cannot see them. Okay, so only do this when if you think it's really necessary. But let me show you exactly what we are doing here. Okay, so this module, okay, has what we call functions. So these functions, if you run this, these functions will not be executed at all because they are functions. Okay, but sometimes, mostly for debugging purposes, people add executable codes to modules like these, because these are not enclosed in any function. So if I was to run this module now, this file now, it will run these. Okay, it will save these functions in memory, but run, execute these lines of code definitely. Okay, and that's an issue sometimes. If you import, if you import the file, that module, they will be executed as well. Okay, so if you want to prevent that from happening, what you do is you include this this if block. Okay, so and this is a standard syntax. Okay? So you say if name is equal to main, then do this. What this means is that if you're running this file like from here, okay, then it will execute it, because name definitely will be equal to main. So it will save all of these and then execute these lines of code. Okay, and if you're running this as well from the command line, it will as well do it for you. It will execute this. But if you were importing this, it will not execute them, as we saw here actually. So you see, this, the file I showed you there, is the same file we have here online. So it has this, see, main, see. But when we imported this module here, on no account did we get printout to the console, okay, because of this if block. Good. So let me show you something. So now let's see. So if we run this, you'll see exactly. See, it will execute them, everything, and you'll see a printout. There should be a printout. See, so there's this printout here, which is just printing out a couple of things here. Okay, but when we imported the module, we didn't see this. Okay, but now, okay, after running this, we see the same thing. Okay, so that's just something to note, that you will. So if you do not have any executable lines of code in the module, you won't see any output when you run this. So that's just something to note. This is just an illustration of what I explained. Okay, good. Oh, this is repetition, so that's fine. Okay, so now to some other thing. Okay, so reloading a module. Okay, there are times when you may have imported, especially user-defined modules. Okay, you may have imported a module, and maybe you make a correction or a modification to the module, and you want to run it again. Sadly, even if you save that module 10 times, you won't have any output. Okay, you won't, the modifications will not reflect at all. Okay, and the reason here is because Python makes an import statement only once. So like when you say import sample module 1, okay, I have executed that. If I say again import sample module 1, it won't do it. Okay, because that's just something they included in order to save to make it more efficient. Okay, so if you have done a modification to your module and you want that to reflect, you have to do something else. You have to reload it instead of importing it, re-importing it. So let's see how that happens. Okay, so let's run this. We can see that this plot is red. Okay, it's a red plot. Okay, so now let's say we want to modify the code on line 114 and change the plot from red to blue. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, let's click on this. Let's go to line 114, which is here. So now I'm going to change this to blue and save. I have saved this. Okay, I have saved that. So now let's run this again. See, it's still red, but if you check what I have here on line 114, okay, it's blue. So which means these changes, even though they're saved, or this change, even though it's saved, has not reflected. So what we need to do is reload. Okay, reload the module. Okay, so how do you reload the module? You need to import another library or another module called import lib. Okay, so you import this first and then use the syntax import lib.reload and the name of the module you want to reload here. Okay, so now let's do this. So we have done this, so let's reload. Good. Now let's run the same thing here. Okay, so let's run it now and see what happens. So you see, now instead of red, it's blue because we have reloaded it. So the changes have been, updated. So that's that about Python modules. Now let's go to packages. We're not going to spend much time here because packages are just almost the same as modules, but they are a higher how do I put it? Because this is they are of a higher hierarchy. So a package is a collection of modules, you see. So which means you have a package, you have several modules, and each module has a function. In fact, you could have sub packages in a package. So which means the package has a smaller package that has several modules. So it's almost the same. It's just another level of hierarchy. Okay, so very simple and similarly, so which means all the import styles we used for modules are applicable in some way to packages. So if, for example, if we want to access function 1 of module 1, we have to be able to access module 1 first. So to access module 1 is just a package dot module 1. So that gives you access to module 1. And we know that to access the function of a module is, you just put the name of the module, okay, dot the name of the function. So in this case, it will be now package dot module 1 dot function 1. Simple. So if we wanted to access say function n of this sub package, we just say package dot sub package dot module 1 dot function n. Simple. Okay, but now let's use a simple example here. Okay, so there's this plotting package, okay, matplotlib. Okay, this is powerful. This is what most people use to plot, to visualize data in Python. Okay, so let's import the entire package first. Okay, so we import it. So we just import matplotlib as npl. As I said earlier, you could use the same style. So we're just importing this as an alias npl. So we run this. Okay, it's there. So now let's get some information on this. So you see here that it says, okay, it calls it a module, but it's more than a module. The name from, and it tells you where it's saved. Simple. Okay, but let's say we want to see the sub packages here. Okay, all we have to do is just say npl dot, okay, and these will appear for you. Simple. Okay, and let's go. So now let me just show you something. So let's say npl dot. So you see, it gives us access to all the modules, functions, and classes here. Okay, and there is a nice function here, module here called PyPlus. So this is what we are going to use to explore. Okay, so let's here, as I said here, so let's say we want to import this module PyPlot. Okay, now again, how do you do this? It's very easy. Okay, but in this case, the module name is the package name dot the module names. So we cannot just import pyplot as plt. You will get an error because pyplot does not exist alone. It exists in the package matplotlib. So that's why we you say import matplotlib dot pyplot or something. Okay, good. So if we do this, now we can see it tells you module pyplot, it tells you where it's saved and all of that. That is that. Okay, so we have imported that one. Okay, so now let's see, we can in the same way, okay, but we have imported pyplot as an alias plt. So instead of using matplotlib.pyplot, we just say plt now wherever. So if we want to access, let me just show you. plt here has several functions, as you can see here, several functions and classes or so. So you can access any of these by just saying plt dot. So see, so these are 3 functions that you can access. So plot, axis, bar, you see, you can tell you function, plot, that. Simple. So we can import each function directly, just as in how do I call them, modules. So again, the same thing. So let's say in this case we're still in with pyplot, which is a module. So here you say from matplotlib.pyplot, you don't say from pyplot. Import the functions that we already know about, and the same thing happens here. It imports them and easy. Okay, similarly you can import all the functions in pyplot by using that star. Simple. And if we display this, you'll see that they're all here now, like a long list of that. You see, they're all in the current namespace. Okay, good. That's not good practice anyway. There's also a second way of importing pyplot itself. So here we just said from matplotlib here, in fact I think here we said import matplotlib pyplot as plt. We could say from matplotlib import pyplot, the same way as we did for modules, and to give you what you want. And there's a third way, where you use the alias. You can say from matplotlib import pyplot as plt, and that's still the same, but here it's no longer pyplot. So here you see we imported pyplot, so that's why we're using pyplot now. Here we imported plt technically, so that's why we're using plt. I think that will be all for today.